Welcome to the All Leads Suck podcast, where we've learned that the world feels that all leads suck, but you have to decide whether or not you suck. Guys, I'm Dominic Felix,
This is Samuel.
I'm Lewis.
and we're going to go in like we go in every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You can check us out here on Facebook and also on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/ All Leads Suck. And actually, I actually don't think that's the right extension for it. Or you can search All Leads Suck and you'll see our pretty faces and you can go ahead and subscribe. We'll appreciate that. So what are we in for today, man? I think we're learning that wholesaling is a different beast, right?
Yeah,
Wholesaling's dead.
yeah.
It's completely dead, 100%.
Wholesaling's out the window.
Could
sounds
you
like
agree
cash
with me
deals are
more? What's that?
It sounds like cash deals are dead.
Yeah, but wholesaling is perceived as cash deals, right?
I think it's a loose term.
Well, part of, I think, what we're all leading to is the fact that a lot of municipalities, states, governments, local governments are just trying to like completely phase it out, right? If you don't own the house, you can't market it.
So can we discuss why they're doing it?
Yeah. If I feel like it, maybe 10, 15 minutes from now. Well, why do you think they're doing it?
So I looked at a couple of laws, and one of them was the one that Lewis recently sent us.
Okay.
That one
Is that
deal
the
that we
Alabama
were
or-
marketing in Alabama.
Okay. But that wasn't a law.
It was a law.
I thought that was a bill they're trying to pass.
I think it was a pass
On
bill.
their offering
It
to
was a
pass.
pass.
But it talked in their intent, not on what the rules have
True.
changed to.
True.
Okay.
So I was going to speak to that very point, which is what's the intent of all of these regulatory organizations? And the intent seems to be to, like you said, prevent people from being able to sell the property or market the property to sell it before they gain ownership.
Right.
So they want you to have control of the property before you can market it and sell it. And the reason they do that, or the reason they say they do that, is because wholesaling is predatory. So it takes advantage of people, and people out there are getting their equity stolen.
So what do you think, like, wholesaling or wholesalers, especially the good ones, they're resourceful, right? They can figure out a lot of different ways to transact a piece of real estate, right? Not everyone's like that. So one of the things is like, are wholesalers in general really truly helping people at the end of the day? Or is at least 50% of it really truly helping people? Or are a lot of those people going to lose their house to foreclosure? And then it transacts in that manner to a flipper at that time, but the seller doesn't get anything from it.
Right. And then they also get bad records on their credit report. Like having a foreclosure on your credit report is much worse than having a wholesaler take care of it and give them a little bit of cash before then.
Right. So we have a guy right now in Toccoa, Georgia, and his name is Mac. We'll leave his last name out of it, right? So his name is Mac, and
Big Mac.
Big Mac, Mackie.
That's pretty much how he talks.
That was his last name, everyone. So you have to translate that. But like I can see a person like Mac sitting at home because the dude hasn't paid his mortgage in how long?
2.5 years.
Yeah.
2.5 years. So
His mortgage is $400 for the record.
So I can see him sitting home and he might know he's going to be foreclosed on. And this isn't the exact example of Mac, but maybe he doesn't sell until someone calls him
Right.
and talks him into selling instead of losing his house to the bank. Otherwise, he would just lose his house to the bank and he wouldn't get X amount of thousands of dollars that we intend to pay him.
So I spoke to somebody with the same thing yesterday. She told me she couldn't make the payment on the 1st of this month, but when I told her how much money I would give her, she was like, "Well, then I'll just let it go to foreclosure." It's like, you're already in foreclosure. Why would you let it go away if it's got to be sold in the next 10 days? Or you could get some sort of money and get this fixed for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So she might lay back and let it all happen because that's the way she handles things in her lives.
Right.
Or someone can reach out to her and give her a solution that at least gives her some money in her pocket and prevents a foreclosure on
Because
her
his
record.
solution is rational. He's
Right.
trying to give her a rational solution.
Right.
She's just looking at it emotional, like I'm just gonna let this house burn to the ground
Right.
before I let somebody have it for
That was her
this much.
response, which
So
is, I'm not going to let somebody have it for that low of a price. I'd rather just let it all go to hell.
so let me ask this question, right? You shouldn't put a house under a purchase and sale agreement without the true intent to perform on that transaction. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, of
Right.
course.
So wholesaling is wiped out. You can't market a property that you don't own and that you don't have control of.
Hmm.
So if all of the wholesalers are wiped out, what is the option for that homeowner? To go to someone that might actually buy it for cash?
Well, let's
How do they
discuss the
find them?
options
If a
because
wholesaler doesn't actually buy it for
what
cash?
are the options of somebody who has a house, and let's say that house is worth $100,000,
Hmm.
right? And currently that homeowner has a choice to make. So let's say they have to sell. They
And we're
don't
going to
want to.
assume wholesaling doesn't exist, right?
Well, let's assume it exists, but it's illegal, right?
Okay.
So the options of that homeowner, and he has to sell. So it's not somebody who wants to sell, it's somebody that has to sell.
Hmm.
And people that have to sell typically have to sell in a very short amount of time,
Yep.
right? So the option one, which everybody probably and their mother know about, is you got to find a realtor, and everybody knows a realtor,
Hmm.
right? So you got to go to a realtor. Most realtors do not want to deal with distressed properties or properties that are not going to net them X amount of commission. So,
Right.
like $100,000 house is not worth realtors' time
Hmm.
because by the time they receive it, let's say they get a 3% commission off of that. That's $3,000 that has to be split between that realtor, their broker, their marketing costs, and so on and so forth.
And
Hmm.
other expenses.
And
Yeah.
other expenses, pictures, listing it, everything under the
MLS
sun,
dues.
MLS dues, whatever
Yep.
it is.
Yep.
So they end up netting like $1,000 off of selling that house, right? So now this realtor has to work double the amount on that transaction than a regular house that they could make triple the amount of money on.
Okay.
Because this is a fast-paced transaction. It most likely has some issues with, whether it's repairs or title issues or a foreclosure that they have to deal with, whatever it is. And realtors are not used to those types of transactions.
Okay.
So this homeowner is basically going and practically asking those realtors in that scenario to list their house and almost begging because this house is not worth their time,
Okay.
right? So that's one option. Another option is they can put it as for sale by owner on the market and
Okay.
try to sell it themselves.
Okay.
We all know how that goes.
Hmm.
I don't know what the statistic out there is, but probably 80% of for sale by owner houses either end up selling for less than what they're actually worth,
Hmm.
It's, yeah.
or they probably don't sell.
So like 85% of for sale by owner homes are sold for significantly less than what they're listed at.
Less than what they could have had listing with a realtor.
Exactly.
Yep.
For multiple reasons, but the biggest being that they don't know how to negotiate. They don't do it for a living most of the time. And the second part is they typically don't know how to value their property appropriately. And when it's explained to them the proper way, then that's when the reduction comes in and they end up having, in order to show how it makes sense,
Yep.
the price comes down. And it's something significant too, is it's like over 10 or 15% is
Hmm.
typically negotiated on over 85% of those for sale
Yep.
by owner
Yep. Yep.
Right.
transactions. Which, if you look at most transactions on market sell within like 7% of what they're listed at,
Hmm.
like majority of them. So
And
it's a
then if
big
you
difference.
list it for sale by owner, you don't even get the same exposure that you would
No,
have gotten on the market. So
no,
it's
you have
like
to be
you
in a
list it
different
on
field.
Facebook Marketplace or Zillow for sale by owner,
Hmm.
you're most likely not getting the same exposure and it's not exposed to all of the agents.
Hmm.
Right,
You mostly just get phone calls from realtors who are prospecting for business,
To try to
right.
get listings.
trying to get a listing out of
Yes.
you,
Yes.
right? Or wholesalers,
Well,
right?
they can't now because it's
But
illegal.
if it's illegal, yeah, if it's
Right.
illegal, obviously you can't. So the other avenue of what they could take is
So you did realtor, you did for sale
realtor
by
for
owner.
sale by owner. Sometimes, if they have, you know, just an issue with making payments on the house or on the mortgage, they could potentially rent it out and not sell it,
Hmm.
right? So let's say it's just somebody who can't make payments anymore,
Hmm.
and they are just like, well, listen, I'm just exhausted, drained out. I have, like that lady that you spoke to yesterday.
Mhm.
She's just like, I have a bad tenant in there. I'm kicking him out, and then I can't make payments.
Yeah.
So another option is they could just not sell it and just rent it out.
Hmm.
Um, is there any other option?
I think cash buying companies will still exist.
Flippers.
Yeah, or cash
Well,
home buying
but the
companies.
thing that's funny is that
But
most cash home buying companies aren't flippers; they're wholesalers.
but
Most
here's
flippers don't market.
That's how it currently is. But
Right.
if it's illegal, then the cash home buying companies will corner the market
Yeah,
with
transfer
less
over.
exit strategies. And the point I'm getting to with all of this is probably with all three of those scenarios, it's going to be heavily discounted based on the scenario. So if it's the distressed seller with a tenant problem or foreclosure and deferred maintenance on the home has to be purchased at a certain price in order for it to make sense. So are those people now predatory because wholesalers don't exist?
Well, I mean,
Who's the now the cash home buying companies? They're going to be predatory?
Well, I mean, at that point, though, it's kind of like the homeowner's decision to make that choice to get into contract. Now, we're saying that assignments is what would be illegal in this scenario, right? So buying a house with cash isn't what's illegal
Right.
in Alabama. It's assigning the rights to buy that afterwards. But I think what's the reality of the question for most of these sellers is what's the most important thing to you? Is it money, time, or quality of transaction?
Hmm.
And like he said, 95% of the time it's time,
Right.
and that's why they're willing to take they get the time first, they get quality of transaction because it's usually pretty
Right.
smooth and painless for them. The only thing that they sacrifice really is that price.
Right.
So what you're trying to get to is that the fact that wholesaling gets outruled, it doesn't benefit the homeowner.
I don't know if it will. I don't know if very much is going to change. In fact, I'm curious if it needs to be more discounted because wholesalers, they want to shop it out to maximize the
Of
dollar
course.
value of it, right?
Of course.
And a lot of it really all depends on what they have it locked up with the underlying seller. But if you have a deal under contract or a property under contract with an underlying seller, and there's a lot of times where wholesalers, they may not lock it because there is a calculation for the perfect flip, right? 70% minus repairs
Plus profit.
it is
No, that's the
no,
company's
that's
profit.
70% minus repairs is the flipper number, the general overall case scenario flipper number, right? Wholesalers are supposed to also add plus minus their fee. But what happens is it becomes so heavily discounted that they lock it up what's perceived as a little bit too high, and perhaps even higher than the typical flipper number. But in a lot of those cases, they still transact it
Mhm.
because of mass marketing efforts or people that want to buy it as a landlord and not a flipper, or maybe a homeowner that just wants it a little bit more discounted. So they have like a blanketed area or blanketed efforts in order to transact that. So there's cases where the seller even sells it for more than what a cash home buying company or a flipper would pay for it.
Or you solve certain challenges that could be associated with the property or the title
Mm-hmm.
to that property.
Mm-hmm.
Take the one that we have in Missouri right now.
Yep.
No flipper would want to touch that.
No.
The one that
Right.
passed, so the parents passed away. There's six heirs. Out of six heirs, there's only four survivors. The two of
Three
them are dead,
survivors.
or three survivors. But now we're finding out that there are four.
No,
There's
no.
an
We
additional
there was
one.
three survivors and two passed on. We found out there's a third one that passed away.
Right. So there you go.
Yep.
Right.
And now everybody that passed away, their kids basically have to be found. Some of their kids are dead. And if like no flipper is going to come in and try to figure that situation out because by the time they figure it out, they're missing out on so many projects because that's not their business model.
Hmm.
Their business model is not to find. Oh, that's Mac.
Mac.
Their business model is
Can I
not to
answer Mac really quick?
answer Mac.
Hey, Mr. Mac. Hey, how can I help you today?
And did you talk with HUD?
Yeah, we're working on getting in contact with them because if you remember, Mac, HUD has another foreclosure collection kind of company involved. It's a different phone number. So I've been trying to call them effortlessly between yesterday and today to try to get somebody on a line to find out the details that we were talking about.
Without
Okay? Just like I said, if you really get with a stud,
Yes.
you got don't get ready to deal. All you gotta do is talk to them and tell them you gonna pay the amount of money
Right.
to them right there and then.
Do you have a different phone number for them?
I don't have no. It's like I give the paper to you. It already have it on it.
Right, that's the number that I am working on calling. So I'm in the middle of a meeting, Mac. I'm gonna call you back in about a half an hour, okay?
Let me know if you don't get in touch. The 6th of this month, it'll go on.
I know, I'm working on it.
It kills every one of
I know, I know. We're gonna make it happen, Mac.
them. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you. Bye bye. Okay, sorry about that, fellas.
Well,
Uh,
is a flipper gonna deal with that?
maybe not.
Is a person that's flipping houses and doing projects, and they have to coordinate contractors, and they have to coordinate um,
Material
materials, and they have to coordinate architect
and
and
financing,
and financing and hard money and
inspection,
the city permitting,
permit. Yeah.
all of that. Are they gonna have time for this?
Dude, so we've all been in wholesaling a good number of years. I've been in it for the last 6 years. And we've been to a lot of events and we've been in and out of trainings that we've put on and coaching and stuff. I've seen lots of flippers come onto like wholesaling training and courses and wanting to go seller direct and could not make it happen because it's a different strategy, right? It's sales and marketing, it's managing seller emotions
Mm-hmm.
and difficult situations, right? So are you built for that?
Like
Or do
yes,
you want to buy at a discount and go flip a home and make a profit, which
And not
is
deal with bullshit.
entirely respectable, but they're
Yeah.
two entirely different organizations,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
So what were you saying?
like yesterday or the day before when we had a seller on the line and we have to convince him to take money over foreclosing on the house. Like it's not logical what they're saying,
It's emotional.
It's
and you
all
call him
emotional.
out on that. Like, listen, this is you seem very emotional. You're making an emotional decision. You're making a wrong decision, and you have to tell people straight up.
It's like give me my 20 or 25K. I'd rather let it go to the bank instead of taking 10 or 15K.
Correct.
Which is crazy.
It's a double negative. It's like
Absolutely
make
insane.
some money, 10 or 15,000. Don't let a foreclosure get on your record.
Yep. Which is just the craziest thing. Like, this world revolves around credit, and to have a foreclosure on your credit rating, you're not going to rent anything. You're not going to buy a car. You're not going to get credit cards. You're SOL.
Well,
Mhm.
this is
And you
why
got
he said.
7 years.
This is what he said to me. He said, "I would rather go through the foreclosure and then gain because it sells on the auction. I'll gain my VA eligibility back." And I'm like, what is that eligibility good for if no lender will
It's gonna
ever
be
give you a
right.
loan?
Right.
Right.
And he's just not thinking, like thinks one step ahead and then he doesn't even think about the second or the third or the fourth step.
Yeah.
hmm
And
Is there a rule with your debt to income or if that past house payment is covered with a renter that you regain more eligibility?
no,
No, you only have a certain amount
you
of
only have a certain
eligibility. I
amount.
think it's 700 and change,
hmm
something like that. Now,
Well,
It's
based
like a
it
on
points
varies by
scale?
rank.
Is it a
right,
It
point scale?
varies by rank.
right,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So with each rank, it's different.
yeah, each
Now,
rank
here's
you do
the
it differently.
question that I have. If it doesn't benefit, because it's clear that, wholesaling, obviously it has predatory um, um,
I think
characteristics, and a lot of people who are in the business give it a very bad name, and they put a bad taste not just in sellers, but also in agents and brokers' mouths, right? Just
Yep.
like,
hmm
I mean, we had a conversation today. Somebody's bad mouthing us without even knowing who we are,
right.
right? So it does have a bad name and a bad rap out there. I think
Mhm.
anybody would agree, but it solves a problem, or it has a need
It,
in the economy.
But
Now,
let me ask you this. The flippers or the landlord buyers or the investors that buy from wholesalers, aren't they encouraging all of that?
of
Because they're
course,
taking the benefit of what you bring to them?
of
of
course, yeah,
course.
they
So
need
so
that.
why don't they get a bad rap?
Because they're not the ones taking the equity. They're the ones buying
They're
the
not on the
taken already.
frontier
Right.
of
They're on the
of the
front lines. Yeah.
transaction. Like
Yeah.
nobody even knows that they exist,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So I'm saying, Sam, me and you, we don't like Lewis. Effective right now, we both don't like Lewis. Do you agree? Yes, you agree. Okay, here, bullets, gun. Here's a gun.
Bang.
Shoot him. Do I go down with you?
I think so.
Maybe I don't get the same sentence, but I go down with you.
Right.
And this is all on recording. So these people are not going down with the wholesalers.
No, no. But here's the thing.
I get what you're saying.
Who
Yeah.
does it benefit? If it doesn't benefit the homeowner, who does it benefit to outlaw wholesaling? Because what happened in South Carolina,
I
they
was gonna go there
said
too.
that they're gonna require everybody who's engaging in wholesaling activities, they're gonna
Hmm.
require everybody who's gonna engage in activities like that to have a license, right? So that's one thing. It's just, okay, they want you to have education, pass ethics class, or whatever it is that
Hmm.
they want you to study, right?
And I do like that.
I like that. I
Hmm.
have nothing against it. The next thing they did was they said, well, anybody who's licensed cannot wholesale. That's how they outlawed wholesaling.
Hmm.
They said if you are gonna wholesale,
You get a
you
license.
have to be licensed. If you're licensed, you cannot wholesale.
Okay.
So it makes no sense.
Okay.
So
But it's more than that.
well, that's the nutshell of the situation
Right.
of what happened. And
Because
the
there's a lot
reason
of different markets that had similar bills or laws put in place. But the biggest part that was different from South Carolina than anyone else is like you can't market it if you don't own it.
Right.
correct. Well, that's the first they have to define what wholesaling is,
Yep.
right? So the definition of wholesaling in general, in the eyes of the law, is tying up a property under contract, marketing the property, selling the property to, or assigning the property to another individual, that is then going to close on that transaction and taking the difference between your original contract with the homeowner and then the
Hmm.
contract between you and the person that bought
Yep.
the property from you, right? So they define it, and then they say that, okay, if you're doing this activity, then you have to be licensed. If you're licensed, then you can't do this activity.
Right.
And when you go to talk to the commission, they say, yeah, well, we're doing this because our intent is to ban wholesaling,
Hmm.
right? So the general point of view, or what I'm understanding from that, is that because if you don't know what the answer is, you just have to follow the money, right? And if you're wholesaling real estate, then you're not under the umbrella of anybody. Like there's no entity that can, like, for example, for realtors, right? There's the
A
NAR,
brokerage.
or your brokerage, and you have to follow their rules and their regulations. For
Well, it
wholesaling,
starts at the state level, right? Because you don't have to be a part of NAR.
exactly.
Okay.
But do you have to, if you're a real estate agent, do you have to follow the laws
Of course.
of a real estate commission?
Yeah, you have to follow the rules.
Right. So what are the rules for wholesaling?
There's no regulatory board for wholesaling. It's
Correct.
peer to peer.
Correct. So they're trying to regulate it, and I'm not against it being regulated. I think it actually helps the industry because
Hmm.
then you have a clear set of rules to play with.
Well,
But
there's a little
then,
bit more of a barrier to entry. So a lot of the people that there are individuals that don't belong in this industry,
Oh
oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
So a lot of them get phased
what would
out.
you say the percentages?
Probably 80-20.
Man. So when I say that, I'm not talking about people that have a tough time getting into the industry. I'm talking about bad actors. I'm talking about people that intend to do bad things.
Okay.
Like, for example, I had a wholesaler that wanted to sell me a property that was subject to seller's mortgage. And I asked them at 4 different occasions, is the seller very clear on how this works? And they told me on 4 different occasions, 100% yes. And I think we talked about the story, but not on camera. But when I went to visit the property for another walkthrough, seller just happened to be there getting some personal things. And we had a conversation, and she had absolutely no idea at all that it was going to be subject to her existing mortgage. And then we all got on the phone because the funny thing is the wholesaler went through the seller's realtor that had it listed without any paperwork because she didn't want to sign anything. And she was like, if you want to throw it
I'll
up and
just
bring
list
me
it.
a buyer, go ahead. I'm not signing anything. So he went through, this wholesaler went through the realtor. Um, and then we all got on the phone together. Me, the wholesaler, the realtor, and the seller. And then the realtor out of nowhere gets, comes into the conversation, and we all knew he was there, so we were all introduced. But he says, yes, Mrs. Seller, but Dominic is only going to keep it like this for like 3 or 4 months because he's going to fix it up and then sell it. Is that right, Dom? I said, no, that's absolutely not right. That was never discussed. And it was told that this was, not in perpetuity, but until the end of the loan. And if there's restrictions, that's not part of the agreement. And that was just blatantly out of the blue. So I'm not trying to hide the fact and just get a deal done with these bad actors, right? Just to get a deal done. I do think we have to be very clear and very direct. And, obviously we want to transact these, so we're going to be resourceful and do what we have to do. But I was put in a position where I was almost forced to give an answer just to get the deal done. And then it puts me in a worse position. What if I don't sell it in 3 or 4 months?
Hmm.
So I'm never going to fall into that. You called me out. Now I'm going to call you out even more difficult, even tougher.
Right.
So those are the bad actors that I think a lot of them will be
But
phased
do
out.
people that don't know what they're doing, are they bad actors just by default because they don't know what they're doing?
Probably.
So the funny thing is,
It's like practicing medicine and you don't know what you're doing. Like you're just gonna open heart surgery and you're not sure of what you're doing.
Right. Is that
I mean, this is your largest asset that you're gonna have as an individual, really.
right?
You're
so
not
check.
gonna buy anything
So I
else.
read or listened to a Grant Cardone audio book. I'm not sure which one it was. It might have been the 10x rule. And he says there's people that want to intentionally do bad things to you, right? And it takes up your time and it harms you when you're trying to strive. Or maybe they're talking bad about you being an entrepreneur or wholesaling and it's not going to work, right? Those people are intentionally trying to hurt you, right? There are also people who are not intentfully trying to hurt you, but they take up a lot of your time. They're a time suck, perhaps even more than the people that intentfully try to hurt you because they always want to be around you or they always want your help or want to borrow money or whatever. And he says that they're even worse than the people that intentfully try to hurt you.
That's funny.
So, based on what you're asking, is the answer might be that they're worse
Right.
than the people intentfully
Now,
because they're just messing up
what is
the
the
entire industry.
percentage of people who don't know what they're doing and they get into real estate investing in general and they try to do acquisitions direct, whether it's through direct to agent or direct to seller, and they start
So the
or
question is what?
try to do it.
The question is
What percentage of those people are hurting the industry?
80%.
are hurting the industry or do they try to do it and they can't do it?
80%.
Both.
Oh my God.
I mean, like the fail rate on realtors is like 94%.
It's
So it's like,
probably
What's the
worse.
fail rate on wholesaling?
well, I think I feel like wholesaling is a little different than real estate, because you're finding people who have pain and who need to sell versus a realtor is finding people who want to sell.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so it's a little different. But like I said, I think the fail rate is probably 80% of people.
So it's still very high.
I think it's probably higher than that, honestly. I mean, it's not easy to do. We all know finding leads is very difficult. We all know the prices have gone up, so it's hard to estimate what will the price be in the future. Is it going to continue to go up higher and higher? Is it going to stagnate? Is it going to come down in certain areas? Are there comps to support those prices? You know, to
Yeah.
support that house in
Now,
St. John's,
one
is there
thing
going to be $1 million homes that you can
Now,
comp with?
one thing I will say is I think the number one mistake anybody who gets into real estate acquisitions or anybody who tries to wholesale, the number one mistake they do is they give too high of a price to the sellers
Mhm.
Because they want
because they
deals.
just want the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
So a seller calls them, the house is a brand new construction, and all brand new constructions are going there for like $400,000 to $420,000. The seller comes in asking for $390,000. There's absolutely no exits on that. If you try to buy that thing for cash, like there's no way you're gonna perform on that contract if you give the seller the 390. And we just recently had an example where that type of lead comes in, we talk to him, and then he already has an offer from another wholesaler at 385. $5,000 off of what the guy is asking. And there's just no chance on planet Earth it's going to perform with brand new constructions from the builders going for 400 to 420 with all those incentives, and that house is 2 years old and lived in.
And no incentives.
Yeah, and the guy is asking 380, 390, and the wholesaler's giving him 385. Like, what are you gonna go market it now at 400, which is the exact same as a brand new that the builder is marketing for? How is that transaction gonna perform? And the guy is 3 months behind on his payments. So what's gonna happen is you tie that person up. You really hurt the seller by giving him that price because you're not gonna perform on that agreement. And then when you don't perform on that agreement and you cancel it, and then the seller is now another month or another 2 months behind. Now the seller has to go and take another price from another person, and God forbid they go to another wholesaler that gives them a high price. And like you set those high expectations, and then those people just basically lose it at one point, and they're like, I'm just gonna let the house go. And that's what happened with another lead that we just had.
Mm-hmm.
The guy went through 6 or 7 different wholesalers. It all started with him getting $30,000 on the front end,
Is this
40,000.
Rockwood, Tennessee? Oh no, this is
The
Grand Park.
the Grand Park. It started with him getting $40,000 to $60,000 as seller carry and another 30 to 40 up front, to then more seller carry on the back end and less up front, to then just a little more up front and no seller carry back, and then to now basically he just has to break even to sell it. Whereas he could have started at the right number in the beginning, and he probably wouldn't have to break even. He could have probably made like 5 to 10K
Mm-hmm.
if he was reasonable, if he had all that time to wait,
Yeah.
right? Because he waited 6 months.
Well, and it goes back to the for sale by owners are screwing up the transactions because they don't know how to negotiate and they don't understand how to price accordingly. They're not in their normal sales job, or they're not in their normal job selling stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they probably work for some business where they have no functionality of sales whatsoever, and they go, "I can do that. Everybody wants to buy in my neighborhood. They love this area. I have a pool. I'm super special."
Right.
And then they end up finding out they're fucking nobody, and nobody gives a shit. And now that they're stuck with what's left for them, and
Right.
and that's the hard part for them to realize.
So I think we can all agree that the states that are adopting these laws that are outlawing certain practices of wholesaling or wholesaling entirely, they're getting stronger, right?
Yeah.
It started in blue
They're getting
states,
stronger.
and now it's going into red states too.
Okay. So is it going to be phased out entirely?
Well, it's a good point because it's like it's an evolution of the market, and you just have to adapt the same way like realtor um, regulations are
Yep.
changing,
Yep.
the NAR regulations are passing, and now asking the seller for the commission for the buyer's agent is also considered predatory,
Well,
right? And they're
yeah.
outlawing that,
It,
or they're not really outlawing it. They are just, the laws that are passing and being misinterpreted are making it seem like, well, you don't have to offer commissions anymore. Whereas you really never had to offer commissions to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's as much as it's predatory and they're worried about homeowners being taken advantage of just financially. I think it also includes the fact that they don't want people sending out mass text messages every single day. Thousands of text messages going to different people on the do not call list and on other lists like that they shouldn't be contacting.
Are you talking
Or
about wholesalers?
right,
But
wholesalers
agents do
and
the
make
same thing.
no, agents typically don't cold call 1,000 people a day. Agents typically will cold call
That's
10 or
probably
20.
true.
They'll probably call expires.
Like
They'll
they're not going
probably
to
call
hire
FISBOs.
VAs. They're not going to hire VAs to
They're not
generate
gonna,
leads.
yeah, they're not gonna
It's
hire
very
VAs to contact people going through foreclosure to say, "Do you want me to help you list your house?" It's just not gonna
right.
happen. And then they're not gonna text them either, "Hey, want to sell your home?" And so I think a lot of that is what's causing this to happen because I mean, we've talked to people who are like, "I get 25 phone calls a day." That's predatory. Like when you're being contacted that much, you're harassed at that point.
Is that okay?
I don't know if that's okay. Like when you're having difficulty with your credit cards, do a 25 credit card companies contact you every day to offer you credit lines?
But do you have to be harassed so that your problem gets solved?
I mean, you shouldn't have to be harassed so that your problem gets solved, but you know,
Where does the number start as to where it turns into harassment? So you get one call a day, is that harassment? One a week, is that harassment?
mm, I don't think one a week is harassment. One a day
Is
could
one a
probably get perceived as harassment to certain individuals.
okay. So one a week. So one every other week. I mean, one a day is
I
harassment.
don't think
Is
calling
one
anybody is
every
harassment at all. Because
Mm.
if they don't want you, yeah, I mean, it's like if you don't want people to call you, shut off your phone.
Well, I think I'm more in line with the idea like how we've been doing recently with pay per click, where people are reaching out to us and they have that need and that want, and
But
it's
even
like,
them, you have to chase.
oh, well, and that's the thing. I mean, right when I looked at our leads yesterday, it's like we're getting like 1 out of 5, but like 2 or 3 out of 5 leads that come in never answer the phone once. They never
You
answer.
have
They
to,
fill out their information.
you have
They
to
do
call
all
them
that.
multiple
so
times.
here's the thing, like so if you're calling them twice a day, 4 times a day, 6 times a day, and you get a deal done with that person,
Hmm.
was that harassment or was that a service?
Well, they opted in for that.
Okay.
When you're going to the city municipal lien search or municipal like liens that they have on
Mhm.
houses, or you're looking up
So
who's
same
having their
thing.
power shut off.
So if you pulled a raw list and you called someone 10 times a day for 2 weeks, and then you actually drew a contract and sold their home and got them $20,000 in cash when they thought
Well,
they was going to lose their house, is that a service or is that
I
harassment?
think I think that's a good service to provide them for
But
sure.
let
But
me
I
ask
think
you,
it's where people, like we said earlier, do people with the
I
wrong
think it's
intentions, not scrubbing
arguable,
lists, and then
right?
what was that company we saw that they called the DNC list 63 times in a day or something like that? That
Well,
we were
I
told.
heard from a very powerful individual that 50% of their deals that they've done came from the
From
DNC
DNC.
list.
I know. I don't doubt that. That's
wonder who that is.
well. You want to know what's funny is
Very curious.
it's
Not gonna, out of
the
respect, I'm not gonna say
say
his
their
name on
name.
camera.
But so the funny thing about it is when you typically walk into a retail store and people come up to you and they say, "Hey, can I help you?" You always say no. So to put
But you
yourself,
don't mean to say no.
no, you do it on purpose.
Dude,
You
Yeah.
the
protect yourself because you know if you get help from them, you'll end up buying way more shit than you want to come there with, than you come there with. So most people are probably putting themselves on the DNC list because they know that they're going to end up purchasing whatever product
the
they
funny
sold to
thing is
them.
I saw something about that as to where, yeah, you go into a Home Depot, you gotta find something, people offer help. No, no, thank you. But then you go and look and you have trouble in the aisle and then
Yeah.
you're looking for that
Yep.
help. Why is that?
Well, you want to you're
People
taken
want to
off
say
guard.
no.
Yeah.
People want to say no more than they want to say
Yep.
yes to
And they,
things.
they they don't want to get taken for a ride. They don't trust people. And like I said,
Well, not only that, it's just like it's an automatic. It's like a
it's a
defense
defense mechanism.
reaction.
Yeah.
You just want to say no to the things that you can say no to. It's like
Hmm.
you have to go outside
It's
of your
almost like
comfort zone to
I
talk to
want to
someone.
ask when I need help, and you call me at the exact wrong, even if it's 10 or 20 seconds later.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready. I'm just gonna say no.
When after I heard that, whenever I go into a store and they ask me, do it, what can I help you with? I'm always like, here's the deal. This is what I need. I lay it all out and I'm like,
Here's
get
my
this
list.
done the most efficient way possible because I don't want to just aimlessly walk through the store and figure it out on my own. Just get me through here
Lewis
as
walks
quickly.
into Publix and hands them a list. He's like, this needs to be the grocery cart that I
Step
need.
away from the register. I know you have 4 people online. Walk with me.
Well, if you're gonna ask
Let's
me if I
knock
need
this
help,
out. You ready?
yeah.
Go.
If you're gonna ask me if I need help, you're gonna fucking help now. You know? Don't ask
So
So,
that question.
here's what I wanna talk about. So I heard someone say recently that, and you were very involved with this, that um, 2020 or 2019 to 2020 and 2021 probably was the era of just cash deals,
hmm
right? So you have a lot of cash buyers in the market, a lot of flippers, everybody's making a lot of money.
Yep.
People are underwriting their deals with an anticipation that the house is going to appreciate an extra 5% by the time they're done with their flip.
Maybe even more.
Right. So it was just like an era of cash
It's just
assignment
chaos.
deals, right?
Just chaos.
So it was very easy to make money at the time.
Yeah.
Then 2021 to 2022 turned into an era of hedge funds. And a lot of hedge funds
I think it's probably, yeah, 2020
were
to
coming in
2023.
and buying a lot of properties,
Yeah.
right? So it was all very easy to also lock up deals because you could pay 80, 90, sometimes 95, sometimes even retail,
Yeah.
right? Like a $300,000 house, you could make a $280,000 offer with like cash benefits, and then just
hmm
sell it to a hedge fund for 300,
hmm
and they were buying,
hmm
and you were the biggest person to attest to that, right?
Okay.
Because you guys
Yes,
have done a tremendous amount of
I would
deals.
agree.
So that died down.
Hmm.
Now, with all this cracking down coming on the wholesaling as a a general um, uh, exit strategy, now people are saying that this is the era of novations and creative finance.
Hmm.
So the question is that going to become outlawed at one point or another? Because novation is a completely different process where you over disclose everything to the homeowner. And it doesn't seem to be wholesale in real estate because you're just acting as an attorney in fact for that
Hmm.
individual. And you're just basically create like putting that almost you're almost becoming a realtor for that person with providing some extra benefits that realtors typically don't provide.
Hmm.
And the question is, or the debate is, whether the next era after this one would be an era of you having to be extremely well capitalized to be able to take deals down. And that's going to be basically like wholesaling is going to turn into wholetailing. And that's
Hmm.
going to be one of the only exit strategies
Hmm.
at that point.
Mm,
So, what do you guys think about that?
So I think so. One of the questions you asked is, are the novations in creative finance going to be cracked down on and regulated more? And what I think is anything, maybe not anything, but almost anything that gets a massive amount of attention and
mhm.
there's a lot of income flowing through it, gets some sort of regulation.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of attention. So the closest kind of like industry to it, like, so in this case, I mean, it's municipalities, but it all comes from like the Association of Realtors and real estate commissions and FREC and stuff like, well, not only FREC, but whatever market it's in, that draws a lot of attention. And then they put in certain laws which they think are going to protect or fight against some of the parts of it that are not good.
Well, I wonder too, what percentage of real estate is being sold off market versus on market? Like you're saying, because like you're saying, if NAR or
I don't
FREC
think a
wants to
lot.
get involved with the money that they're missing out on, right?
Hmm.
Because if one out of every five homes is sold off market, that's a pretty
Hmm.
substantial amount of income for them. That's 20% of the market
Hmm.
they're missing out on, you know?
Right. So I don't know if it's that much. That would mean 20% of all homeowners are distressed, right? Or
Not
or more,
necessarily, because
or
off
more.
market doesn't mean that it's a
It
distressed
could be
sale.
creative. I mean,
Could be
this guy isn't
creative. Could be.
necessarily going into foreclosure yet. He's just like, fuck it, I'll stop paying the bills. I don't care,
So now
you
it's
know?
like, how do you define stress, distress, and motivation? So for example, you had homeowners that you're working with right now.
Yeah.
They're in Rockwood, Tennessee.
Yeah.
They may not be financially distressed, but their motivation is time
Yeah.
Right.
and just scenarios that they went through that they're discouraged with, right?
Well, they've been failed multiple times.
Right, right. So is their situation distress?
I guess.
I
Yeah,
think
I'd
at
say
this
so.
point they are. They're in
Well,
distress.
they're under contract to buy
but
a
it might
house.
not
They're
be.
trying to move.
They're probably not going to come up on any wholesale list that you would pull if you're going to do proactive reach
True.
out.
That's
So
true.
they're not probate, they're not divorced, they're not
Well,
pre-foreclosure.
is it long
It's
days
not an
on market?
absentee owned property.
It would be a
It's
withdrawn
over
listing.
80 days on market.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like,
So I guess
is that
that's
considered?
agent
I
outreach.
don't know if that's
Yeah.
distress though. It's not
Well,
necessarily
usually,
distress.
usually, like most of these sub twoies will tell you that like they're looking for properties that are on market for at least 60 days because most stuff is selling 60
Mm,
days or less. And there's typically a reason why. And when it's like something that was bought recently, they already know that there's some sort of underlying issue that these people are most likely prepared, they're anticipating coming. So
mm-hmm.
they're trying to get ahead of it.
So do you
Right.
think a lot of people are currently pivoting? Because there was a pivot from, just cash buyers, local cash buyers to hedge funds.
Mm-hmm.
And then from hedge funds, it went like it seems like it's going towards novations and creative. I feel like a lot of people are reaching out to us and asking us, what is our novation process? What is our
Right.
creative process?
Right.
Right? And we didn't even have one. Like we just created our process 3 to 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like it's a great wave that could be written
Sure.
the same way like the hedge funds were.
Yep.
But I think the people that will last in the market are the people who are able to pivot.
Right.
So I want to think of what is the next move after, because I feel like novations would be outlawed at one point or another.
It certainly can be.
I don't know about creative. I don't think you can really outlaw or ban creative. Um, because essentially you're maybe wholesaling creative deals could be outlawed because that's marketing the property. But I think creative deals are just easier because it's just less capital required to put them together. So is the next wave creative deals or deals that you have to take down and then relist on the MLS? So wholesaling.
The next wave is most likely because I think wholesaling's been pretty popular the last year or two, similar to like how Novation has.
But most
But it's
people don't do
probably
it because of the costs and risks.
sure, but then they also don't know how necessarily. But it's also probably going to be something a mixture of creative and Novation, which is what we've been seeing.
So
Is
you don't think novations would be outlawed?
I mean, there's going to have to be some way that you're going to be able to assist a homeowner, whether you have to get a license in that state or there's something that
Yeah,
can
but
be
like,
done.
like for
The
example, in
homeowner's
South
looking for somebody
Carolina,
to help
they
them
already,
market that property.
if they're already banning the wholesaling
Well, you don't
agent,
wouldn't call it wholesaling in South Carolina. You call it a net listing
but net listings are illegal.
in the state of South Carolina.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that was illegal in the
Yeah,
state of
I
South
think they're illegal everywhere except Florida and probably Texas.
Carolina. Really?
Yes. Net listings are not allowed by real estate commissions of other states. Yeah. So are you if
So is a novation legal in South
It's only
Carolina?
illegal in California, Texas. Our
it's
net
only
listings,
legal in
yeah, are considered unethical and illegal. Okay, but California, Texas, and Florida are the only ones that
California,
allow.
Texas, and Florida are the
Wow.
only states where you can do net listings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I told it to you guys before too.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it was very few. I don't know if I knew the exact states. But can you novate in South Carolina right now?
That's the question. I feel like it's a gray area. Now here's a couple.
So if there's
But you're not
technically
assigning
saying
it. It's a
you
lien.
can't market a property that you don't own, is the answer no?
Yeah, but if you have a lien on it, is
But
that the same
are
thing?
you marketing or is technically the homeowner marketing? Because you're just acting as an attorney in fact. But yes,
So
technically
you sign a purchase and sale agreement.
there we go. The technical answer to that is no, because you signed the purchase and sale agreement, which you're gonna, you know, supposedly perform on. The difference is that your purchase and sale agreement clearly states that you're not gonna perform on that agreement. So that's why I said it might be a gray area, is because you're flat out coming out and saying that you're not going to perform. Your job is to find a third party purchaser for the property, which most wholesale agreements or wholesale purchase and sale agreements don't state that. They say that the purchaser has a right to assign the agreement. It doesn't say that the purchaser is going to assign the agreement and no other exit, right? So that's why I said it might be a gray area, but I would probably lean more towards saying yes, it is outlawed in South Carolina.
Okay. Another question. Besides the way that the end buyer brings the funds in to procure the transaction, what is the difference between a novation and an assignment? Besides getting the end buyer a way to pay for him bringing the funds to the transaction, is there any difference? Because essentially, a novation helps to enable the transaction so that a traditional lender
Yeah.
can give the buyer the proceeds to pay for the property, including the novation fee. And they won't do it for an assignment fee. So
Right.
aside from that, what's the difference?
Well,
There is none.
yeah, I don't know how much
Okay.
there really is. The other question I was going to ask is if you couldn't do assignments or novations in South Carolina or in other states, could you technically charge a marketing fee and help them market the property for
You have to
So
be
a
licensed.
marketing,
to market?
well,
Of course.
But you're a marketing company. You're
So
a
here's-
You
marketing
can't
agency.
market real estate without a real estate license.
You can't help the homeowner market their property for a fee.
so
Like you
what?
wouldn't be involved in the transaction.
You
You'd
can
just be
take
marketing
like
it.
they can pay you to take pictures.
Then you can't put it on the sites for
Well,
them.
here's the thing. What I have learned, and I can be wrong, is the fee for marketing in most all cases has to, well, especially with real estate or whatever, has to be pre-agreed to and paid before the marketing efforts
Could
start.
you
That
get
is
paid?
So
Could
it's
you
like,
get
oh,
paid a
I'm gonna
dollar
run
up front and
marketing
the
fee.
rest at closing, or the
You
full
can't
thing
get
in
in
full?
after the fact, depending on how the
Mm,
transaction turns out, marketing
mm.
fee
yeah.
for
I
real
mean,
estate.
even in Florida, the
Could you?
law is clear. The law is clear that you cannot market a property without a real estate license. Now, you can
Market a
help
contract.
you can help and sell a property, but you cannot financially benefit from that transaction. You will still be responsible for all the things that you're providing, like all the services. Like if somebody appoints you, for example, is um, a probate and there's a will, and the property is supposed to be passed down to the kids, and the will states that the parents wanted the property to be sold, and here's a custodian who's going to help sell the property, and then the money's going to go to the kids. That custodian can technically sell the property even if they don't have a real estate license. I believe I'm correct on this, but they cannot financially benefit from that transaction if they don't have a real estate license. But they still owe those fiduciary
Well, you can't
duties.
collect a commission.
Correct.
You can't collect a commission because you can collect a marketing agreement. You can't
Right.
collect a marketing fee.
Correct. You can't get paid for that.
So have you guys heard of the concept of a bird dog?
Yeah.
That's
What
illegal as well.
what is a bird? No, it's not
Yes,
illegal.
it is.
How you do it can be illegal.
Right.
Well, getting paid for a property that closes,
You can prepay a bird dog for their
yes,
efforts.
you can
Oh.
prepay.
Yep.
That's completely different.
But what is a bird dog?
Somebody gives you an inside tip on a property that needs to be sold off market.
Kind of getting you a lead in a
Yeah.
way, right?
It's
Right.
yeah, they're
Right.
what are they? PPLs.
Right. Do you know where that
Bird dogs
term
the
comes
original
from?
PPL. When
Bird dog?
when dogs
Yeah.
used to bring you bird for honey,
Yeah, you go bird hunting, you shoot the
mm,
bird falls on the ground, the dog runs, gets the bird, brings it
brings it
back to
back,
you,
yeah.
right? So that's where the concept came from. So there are companies that I have met with that have enormous bird dog campaigns, right?
Mm,
So they recruit people to go out into the world and drive for dollars and whatever they do to find these distressed properties and bring it back, and they build organic lists, and then they reach out to these homeowners, skip trace them, reach out to them, stuff like that, right? So they have campaigns behind them, and
They pay
they,
up front.
well, a lot of those companies have not paid up front. It's like after they transact,
It's
I'll pay
incentive
you
based.
1,000 or two, or 5 or 10% of the transaction, which is not the right way to do it. That's technically not the legal way,
Right.
but it's what they have done. But I went to a real estate training where he set up a way where you prepay them. So instead of giving them 1,000 or two after the deal closes, it's more like I'll give you like between $1 and $3 per lead that you bring me. And then people are very willing to do that. People
So
are willing to drive up and down roads. He basically had this whole thing as to where you put together an ad, you post it on Craigslist in certain areas. People reach out to you like crazy, and they'll go same day or next day, and they'll bring you addresses with pictures, and then you pay them $1 to $3 per
or
property.
you hire an Uber driver for $8.
Hey,
so here so here's I'm gonna do the farm clipping for Lewis
Mm,
or clip farming.
clip farming, yeah.
So here is a way you can basically wholesale properties in states where it's not legal to wholesale properties. Now, this is not what I advise people to
it's
do.
hearsay.
It's not legal
It's
at
what
all.
This is
we've
not,
heard.
this might not be legal.
Allegedly.
I'm not a lawyer. This is not an advice.
It's not
But here's
financial
how you could
And
do
I'm
it.
not under arrest.
I'm not under arrest. But here's how you could do it. You could, because the challenge is you gaining control of the property before you go market it, or you gain an ownership of the property before you go market it. Now, what you could do is instead of making this a regular transaction and buying the property and paying for it all up front, you could buy it on what's called a contract for deed, or maybe an executory contract, or in some states it's called a land contract, where you pre-agree to not transfer title on the property until all of the clauses of that contract have been fulfilled. And the way you can structure it is you can give $500 as an initial down payment on the property and tell the homeowner that you have 3 months or 2 months or whatever the time frame is to pay off the rest on the house. So let's say it's a $200,000 house, you'd give a $500 down payment, you'd sign a contract for deed, and you'd tell the homeowner that the $199,500 would be paid to the homeowner in 2 months, all at the same time as a balloon payment. And what you do is you go find a buyer at that time because now you control the property and you have ownership of it. You go find the buyer at that time, and then you close on the buyer closes on that property with you. You execute your contract for deed. The title transfers to you, and then from you, the title transfers to the end cash buyer. Now, the worst case scenario in this is if you don't locate the cash buyer, you just lose your $500. But at least you didn't have to take out hard money to take down a $200,000 asset. So
It's similar
You should
to
try
like
one, man.
it's similar to the IRS tax bill. If you don't know the rules to the game, you can't play.
right.
And there's always a loophole. You just have to know those rules and how to play those
You should
games.
try one.
We,
Let's see what happens.
I think we need to sit down and have a discussion.
So what's the technical way of getting control of the property? Conveying the deed with clear title?
No, because you can own the property without the deed being in your name.
That's true. It doesn't have, that's at default the way that states do it, but you probably don't have to
Right.
until it's fully paid off
Correct.
or until other parts of the contract are fulfilled.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, I can
Because
see that.
that's what the contract for deed technically is,
Mhm.
Well,
right? It's you fulfilling the contract, but while you're fulfilling the
But-
contract, you're the owner of that property.
Okay.
couldn't you also put it in an LLC?
So
and
then
sell
you'd
the
have to
LLC
consult
and-
with an attorney, a local attorney in that market,
Absolutely.
to see if they would consider you the owner of that property inside of that contract period.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Interesting. Interesting.
The,
What if part of the contract is to quit claim the deed and then quit claim it back at a certain point and then convey it with clear
that's
title?
deed in lieu, but I feel like that messes up the chain of title and it
Why?
could mess up, well, because you're quit claiming property back and forth. And if the owner has a clear deed from the previous owner and he has title insurance, his title insurance could get messed up if he quit claims it to another individual and then back
Mm-hmm.
to him.
Mm-hmm.
So not to, overstep the boundaries of
So maybe you do an abstract title search or something inexpensive, or maybe a full title search.
but even still, if you quit claim the property out of your name, you're forfeiting your previous title insurance.
Right.
So you don't want to
What's
quit
the
claim
most
property.
inexpensive way to legally, not legally, but to convey clear title without the whole rigmarole of a closing statement?
You can't.
Yeah, probably.
You can't. There is one way. The one way is if the LLC owns the property, you could transfer the ownership of that LLC.
But it has to get an LLC. It has to convey into an LLC
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. If the property is owned in the LLC already.
if it is already. Okay.
Right. Now, another way, what Lewis said is you could technically buy the property in an LLC, right? Or put a contract on that property, and then the purchaser of that property on the contract is the LLC. And then instead of selling the contract or signing the contract, you just go sell the membership rights to the LLC.
Right.
But I feel like that's a little of a gray area.
I guarantee you title companies would have a nightmare trying to put that
'Cause
together.
I don't think you don't even need title companies.
I guess, yeah,
Because you're just changing the articles of organization
Yeah.
and changing the owner, and then the different person signs at closing. It's really not that hard.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge is you don't own the property and you're going to market it.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're marketing the company that owns the property.
You would have to, yes, market the
Yeah.
company that
Again,
has
gotta know how to play
a
the game.
contract that has rights to buy a property.
Right.
So it just gets very messy. That's why I said it's probably a gray area.
Yeah. But life is gray. Right.
I think life is black and white.
You don't know what you don't know. But
Yeah.
I know, so we had Gonzalo on one of the first, if not the first episode
Yep.
of the All Leads Suck podcast. And I don't think it was during the podcast, I think it was after the podcast, that he was really worried about being in wholesale for the long term of his life because of the way wholesaling is going.
I'm concerned too. I feel like I'll lose all my goddamn hair if I stay in for too much longer. I'll end up like you by the time
Well, just you want to transact legitimately and you want to have the freedom to be able to make good payables.
Yes,
I mean, we have a life that we're trying to build and we're trying to build a team and we're trying to take care of people and
of course.
you want to flourish and grow, you don't want to go in the other direction. If you're
Yeah.
not growing, you're doing the exact opposite, right? So I think it's a legitimate concern. And people are still just now learning about wholesaling, trying to get
Oh,
into it.
yeah.
I really
So,
think wholesaling is not just a signing contracts, though. It's
It's
just
not.
solving problems in real
hmm
estate.
hmm
It's not
Well, you
really
don't say you're sub-2ing.
But here's the
You say
thing.
you're like, I'm
true.
wholesaling
Even
a
if it's
sub-2 deal.
something along the lines of you can't wholesale unless you're licensed in that state, then you can't
It
sell an assignment
it'll
contract
probably
You
become a
become
very it'll
licensed.
probably become a
in that
very
state
cash
if your
intensive
state
no.
reciprocates.
It'll probably become a very cash
Well,
intense
either
business.
either become licensed or get cash into
Yeah.
get capitalized. Another option is become licensed or partner with a realtor
hmm
who would write the agreements.
Now, there's always a solution, I'm sure, just like we're trying to solve the South Carolina with contract for deed and selling LLCs and all of that stuff. But as you add more moving parts and there's more regulations, things become more expensive and then deals have to be deeper, which means they're a lot more difficult.
Yep.
Would you guys agree with that?
100%. That's why I said it'll probably get to like we were talking about. It's cash. It's just like straight cash. You're not wholesaling it. You're buying it so
Then you're
deep.
making some fat
Yeah,
rips.
you're getting it super
No.
deep, and then
You're
selling it
either
over. I mean,
you're
you're
doing
selling
it
it.
to cover costs.
Yeah, but I feel like if there's less competition in the market, you're going to go for
That is
fatter rips.
that
But it's not
is
just that though. But you're
another
gonna have
thing.
you're gonna be paying more for the hard money and everything else.
I don't think you would be.
Oh, dude. Oh,
I
wow.
don't think so.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, yes, I like less competition.
I
That's the
love that.
part.
I
That's the
love
part I
it.
love about it. So if you find that loophole, that contract for deed or whatever the case may be, then that's likely the answer. But the beautiful thing about wholesaling is not really having to take the risk of taking on that asset. Because the fact of the matter is, you can make really good guesses, and you have those gut feelings like properties you'll take down. We've said that several times since we started our wholesale. Do we have to take that down? Buy it, get control of the asset, right? But how few and far in between are those decisions? I mean, within 3 months, we're contracting 25 plus properties,
Yeah.
right? 2 to 3, we had that gut feeling that we would take it down and actually buy that piece of real estate.
Yeah.
So how rare are those instances going to be
I don't
where you
know.
have to have the dedication to knowing that you're going to take that asset down with very low risk to move it and make a profit?
I mean, I think they would increase actually. On the contrary to like an
How would
probably an opinion,
increase?
the amount of properties that you take down because
I think they would increase because with
you're
a
gonna
lower
be making
offers.
lower offers due to lesser competition.
Yeah.
And like if you're not competing with anybody, why would you make a higher offer, right? If a house that you can just mark it out and sell for 200,000, you can lock it up for 180, but now you have to take it down, you have to go through the headache and nobody's really bidding against you. You don't even have to go to 180. You're going to offer 126,
hmm
Yeah.
130.
hmm So do you think there's a potential that it will blend to an environment like that?
Yes.
How long? People want to know when.
I
Not
think
soon
two
enough.
years.
2 years?
I don't know, man.
Is that presidential candidate dependent?
No, I don't think so. I think 1 to 2 years, we're going to start seeing
If Kamala
pivots.
got
I was just gonna
elected,
say,
would it take longer?
if Kamala
And if
gets
Trump
elected,
got elected, would it be shorter?
it'll be World War Z out there, so we won't have to worry about much of that. The fucking world will be on
All right, let's
fire.
wrap
Thanks
this
for
up.
revealing your political
Let's
candidate.
wrap
If you
this up.
couldn't tell by Make Selling Simple again, then I don't know what how else you would have been able to tell.
All right, guys. Well, once again, we appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining the All Leads Suck podcast, where the world believes that all leads suck, but you have to decide whether or not you suck. Guys, I'm Dominic,
This is Sam.
Lou.
and we'll see you guys next week.